The fork clattered against the porcelain plate, the sound slicing through the stifling air like a gunshot. My father's face, twisted in a mask of crimson rage, hovered inches from mine. His hot breath reeking of whiskey and garlic from the roast beef he'd barely touched. "You and your kid are just freeloaders," he bellowed, spittle flecking my cheek. The words hung there, venomous and irreversible, as the dining room fell into a tomb-like silence. My mother, seated at the far end of the oak table we'd inherited from her parents, froze with her napkin halfway to her lips. Her eyes, wide with something that looked like horror but felt like complicity, darted between us. My 5-year-old son, Tommy, whimpered from his booster seat, clutching his stuffed bear as if it could shield him from the storm. In that instant, the family I'd clung to like a lifeline fractured, and a seed of fury planted itself deep in my gut, twisting into something dark and unyielding. I wiped the spit from my face with the back of my hand, my heart pounding like a war drum. How dare he? After everything, after I'd moved back home 2 years ago, pregnant and abandoned by Tommy's father, scraping by on waitressing shifts while they helped with babysitting. Helped. It was a joke. My parents had offered the roof over our heads as a temporary fix, but it had morphed into this prison of resentment. Dad's outbursts had grown sharper lately, laced with accusations of laziness, but this was a declaration of war. I glanced at Mom, expecting her to intervene, to defend me like she always had in our whispered kitchen conversations. But she just lowered her napkin, her lips pressing into a thin line, and said nothing. That silence, it hit harder than Dad's words. Betrayal bloomed in my chest, hot and suffocating, as I realized she wasn't shocked. She agreed. "Freeloaders," I whispered, my voice trembling not from fear but from the rage coiling tighter. Tommy's whimpers escalated to sobs, and I scooped him up, his small body trembling against mine. The scent of his shampoo, baby fresh and innocent, clashed with the acrid tension in the room. Dad leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his beer belly, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "Yeah, that's right, Sarah. You've been mooching off us long enough. Time to grow up and get out." Mom finally spoke, her voice soft and placating, the way it always was when she played peacemaker. "Honey, let's not do this now. It's dinner." But her eyes avoided mine, flicking to the floral wallpaper peeling at the corners, as if the room's decay mirrored our families. I carried Tommy upstairs to our cramped bedroom, the one that used to be mine as a kid, now crammed with his toys and my regrets. As I rocked him to sleep, humming a lullaby through gritted teeth, my mind raced. Freeloaders. The word echoed, fueling a fire I'd long suppressed. I'd paid rent when I could, bought groceries, cleaned the house top to bottom. But Dad's gambling debts, Mom's secret shopping sprees, those were the real drains, the ones they hid behind smiles and Sunday roasts. I'd overheard their arguments late at night, Dad blaming the economy, Mom pleading for just one more credit card. And now they turned on me, on Tommy. The injustice burned, morphing into humiliation as I pictured the neighbors whispering about this single mom leeching off her folks. That night sleep evaded me. I lay in the dark, the house creaking like an old ship in a storm, my thoughts a whirlwind of denial and fantasy. Part of me wanted to storm downstairs and scream back, to list every sacrifice I'd made. But another part, colder and sharper, whispered of justice. Revenge. The word tasted metallic on my tongue, like blood from a bitten lip. What if I exposed them? Their lies, their hypocrisies. Dad's business trips, that were really casino binges. Mom's affair with the neighbor Mr. Harlan, that I'd caught glimpses of, stolen kisses in the backyard when Dad was out. I'd kept quiet, out of loyalty, out of fear of shattering the fragile peace. But now that loyalty felt like chains. By morning, the anger had solidified into resolve, though doubt gnawed at its edges. I tiptoed downstairs, the wooden steps groaning under my weight, the air thick with the stale remnants of last night's meal. Mom was in the kitchen, brewing coffee, her back to me. Her shoulders slumped, and for a moment, guilt flickered in me. She was my mother after all, the one who'd bandaged my scraped knees, who'd cried with me when Tommy's dad left. But then I remembered her silence, her averted eyes. "Morning," she murmured, not turning around. The coffee maker gurgled, a mundane sound that grated against my raw nerves. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked, my voice low but edged with steel. She finally faced me, her face pale and lined, looking older than her 58 years. "Sarah, your father's under a lot of stress. The bills. They're piling up." Excuses. Always excuses. "And you agree with him. That Tommy and I are freeloaders." She hesitated, her hands twisting a dish towel. "It's not that simple. We've been helping you for so long. Maybe it's time for you to stand on your own." The words stung like a slap, confirming what I'd feared. Betrayal from both sides. My heart ached, a mix of heartbreak and resentment swirling into obsession. They wanted me out. Fine. But I'd make sure they regretted every word. Over the next few days, I played the part of the dutiful daughter, my smiles forced, my words measured. Inside, plans brewed like a storm on the horizon. I started small, subtle, gathering evidence. While Dad was at work, another lie. He hadn't held a steady job in months. I rifled through his desk drawers in the study. The room smelled of dust and faded cigar smoke, the leather chair creaking as I sat. Bank statements crumpled in the back, showing overdrafts and cash advances. Credit card bills maxed out on gambling sites. And then a folder labeled investments. But inside, receipts from pawn shops where he'd hawked family heirlooms. Grandma's pearl necklace gone. My chest tightened. Those were meant for me, for Tommy someday. Mom's secrets were easier to uncover. Her phone, left charging in the living room while she gardened, buzzed with messages from Jim H. "Mr. Harlan. Miss you already. Last night was incredible." My stomach churned, a cocktail of disgust and vindication. I'd suspected for months, the way she'd linger at the fence, laughing a little too brightly. But seeing it in black and white, it fueled the fire. I snapped photos with my phone, my hands shaking not from fear but from the thrill of power. This was it, the ammunition for my revenge. But doubt crept in. Was I really going to destroy them? Expose the affair, the debts? What about Tommy? He loved his grandparents, flawed as they were. The moral conflict tore at me, fantasies of confrontation warring with guilt. In quiet moments, I'd stare at the ceiling, imagining their faces crumpling in shame, then question if I was becoming the monster they accused me of being. Tension built slowly, like pressure in a fault line. Dinners became battlegrounds of unspoken words. Dad grunted through meals, his fork scraping the plate like nails on chalkboard. Mom chattered about trivialities, the weather, the neighbor's new car, her voice high and brittle. Tommy, sensing the undercurrent, clung to me more, his questions innocent daggers. "Why is Grandpa mad?" I'd hug him tight, whispering reassurances, while inside, resentment festered. One evening, as rain pattered against the windows, blurring the world outside into a gray haze, Dad cornered me in the hallway. His breath was sour again, eyes bloodshot. "You got a plan yet? Or you just gonna keep sucking us dry?" The words ignited fresh fury, but I swallowed it, forcing a nod. "I'm looking for apartments." I was looking for ways to make him pay. That night, I sat at my laptop in the dim glow of the screen, the house asleep around me. The cursor blinked accusingly as I drafted an anonymous email to Dad's old boss, attaching scans of the embezzlement I'd uncovered. Small sums siphoned from his last job, hidden in the statements. My fingers hovered over send, heart racing. This could ruin him, land him in legal trouble. Obsession gripped me. I pictured his humiliation, the handcuffs clicking. But then Tommy stirred in his sleep, murmuring "Mommy," and guilt flooded in. Was this justice or destruction? I closed the laptop, breath ragged, the suspense of my own indecision coiling tighter. Weeks blurred into a haze of calculated normalcy. I took extra shifts at the diner, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the grease scent clinging to my uniform. Tips were meager, but I squirreled them away, building a nest egg not just for escape, but for leverage. Mom noticed the change, her brow furrowing as she folded laundry one afternoon. The dryer hummed in the background, warm air wafting through the basement. "You're working too hard, Sarah. Let us help." Hypocrisy. I bit back a retort, instead probing gently. "Help like with the bills? Or like with Mr. Harlan?" Her face drained of color, the shirt slipping from her hands. What are you talking about?" Her voice cracked, revealing the fear beneath her facade. I leaned in, my whisper laced with suppressed rage. "I know, Mom. About the affair. About everything." She crumpled against the washing machine, tears welling. "Please don't tell your father. It was a mistake. We're struggling, Sarah. The marriage. It's been dead for years." Motivation spilled out. Loneliness, financial strain, Dad's addictions. For a moment, pity softened my resolve. She wasn't evil, she was broken. But then I remembered her silence at dinner, her complicity in labeling us freeloaders. Heartbreak twisted into cold calculation. "I won't tell if you help me." Blackmail. The word echoed in my mind, morally gray and intoxicating. She agreed, her nods frantic, and thus began our uneasy alliance. Subtle hints of vengeance emerged. Mom accidentally leaving bills out for Dad to see, sparking arguments that exposed his lies. I'd listen from the stairs, the wood cool under my feet, tension building like a noose tightening. One fight escalated, voices rising through the walls, Dad admitting to pawning more items, Mom feigning shock. Tommy covered his ears in bed, and I held him, whispering stories of brave nights, while inside I plotted the final blow. The turning point came on a crisp autumn evening, leaves crunching underfoot as I walked home from work. The streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows that mirrored my doubts. At home, Dad was waiting in the living room, the TV muted, a beer in hand. "Sit down," he growled. My pulse quickened. Had he discovered something? Mom hovered in the doorway, her eyes pleading. He slammed the bottle down, foam spilling. "Your mother's been acting strange. You know why." Suspense hung heavy, the air thick with unspoken accusations. I met his gaze, feigning innocence. "Maybe she's tired of your bullshit, Dad." The words slipped out raw and unfiltered. He lunged, not physically, but with words sharper than knives. "You're poisoning her against me. You ungrateful bitch." Humiliation surged, but so did resolve. That night, as rain lashed the windows, I sent the email. Anonymous, irrefutable. The click of the mouse echoed like a gavel. No turning back now. The days following the email were a slow unraveling, tension simmering like a pot on the verge of boiling over. Dad's phone rang incessantly, his former boss's number flashing on the screen. He'd answer in hushed tones, pacing the hallway, his footsteps thudding like accusations. "It's a misunderstanding," he'd mutter, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill in the air. Mom avoided my eyes, her alliance fracturing under the weight of guilt. She'd whisper in the kitchen, the faucet dripping rhythmically. "What have you done, Sarah? This could destroy us all." But her protests were half-hearted. Deep down, resentment toward Dad fueled her silence. Tommy, oblivious to the undercurrents, played with his trains in the living room, the clack-clack of plastic wheels a stark contrast to the storm brewing. Inside, my emotions warred, elation at the impending justice clashing with fear of the fallout. Fantasies plagued me. Dad begging for forgiveness, Mom finally free. But doubt whispered, what if this backfired? What if Tommy suffered? Moral conflict gnawed, making sleep fitful. I'd stare at the ceiling fan whirring lazily, blades slicing shadows, mirroring my slicing conscience. Was I justified? Or had betrayal turned me vengeful, no better than them? The first crack appeared midweek. Dad stormed in from errands, his face ashen, slamming the door so hard the pictures rattled on the walls. They fired me retroactively, saying I owe restitution. His voice boomed, echoing off the faded wallpaper. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, but her eyes flicked to me with accusation. I feigned shock, my heart pounding. What happened? He collapsed into the armchair, the springs groaning, and spilled it all. The loans he'd taken from company funds, the cover-ups. Lies unraveled like pulled threads. Tommy peeked from the doorway, wide-eyed, and I ushered him upstairs, his small hand warm in mine. "Is Grandpa okay?" he asked, voice tiny. "He's just upset," I lied, guilt twisting like a knife. That evening, as twilight painted the sky in bruised purples, Mom confronted me in the backyard. The grass was damp from recent rain, squelching under our shoes, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. "You did this," she hissed, her face inches from mine, mirroring Dad's outburst weeks ago. "The email, it was you." Denial rose instinctively, but I met her gaze, cold resolve hardening. "He deserved it. You both did." Tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with the mist. "I thought we were in this together. But you're just like him, manipulative." The words stung, revealing her layered pain. Betrayal by Dad, now by me. For a flicker, heartbreak overrode my anger. She was my mother, flawed but human. But then resentment surged, her affair, her silence. "You chose him over us. Over Tommy." She slapped me then, the crack sharp in the quiet dusk. My cheek burned, shock freezing me. "Get out," she whispered, voice breaking. "Take your kid and go." The ultimatum I'd anticipated, yet it hit like a gut punch. Humiliation bloomed anew, but so did obsession. This wasn't over. As I packed that night, the house creaking with ghosts of happier times, plans evolved. Exposing the affair would be the final strike. Poetic justice, shattering Dad as he'd shattered me. I found a cheap motel on the edge of town, the neon sign buzzing faintly, the room smelling of stale smoke and desperation. Tommy cried himself to sleep on the lumpy bed, clutching his bear, and I held him, tears silent on my cheeks. Inner thoughts raged. Was this freedom or exile? Doubt clawed, but resolve won. The next day, I anonymous tipped the local paper about Dad's embezzlement, attaching evidence. Slow burn suspense built as I waited, checking my phone obsessively in the diner's break room, the clatter of dishes a distant hum. The article dropped online 2 days later, a bombshell in our small town. Local man accused of fraud. Family heirlooms pawned to cover debts. I read it in the motel, screen glowing in the dim light, satisfaction mingling with guilt. Calls flooded in. Old friends, relatives. Mom's voice on voicemail cracked. "Sarah, please. This is killing him." But I ignored them, focusing on the next phase. The affair. I'd compiled texts, photos, irrefutable. Confrontation came unexpectedly. Dad showed up at the diner during my shift, the bell jingling ominously. Customers glanced up from their booths, the aroma of coffee and bacon cloying. He looked haggard, eyes sunken, suit rumpled. "Sarah," he rasped, sliding into a stool. "We need to talk." Tension coiled. Was this apology or threat? I poured him coffee, hands steady despite the tremor inside. "What do you want?" He leaned in, voice low. "I know it was you. The email, the tip." "Why?" Raw emotion surfaced. His anger, but beneath regret. "You called us freeloaders. After everything we've done." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I was angry. The debts. They were crushing me. I didn't mean it." For a moment, his vulnerability cracked my armor. Layered motivations emerged. His gambling born of desperation after layoffs. His outbursts shields for shame. Guilt flooded, maybe we were all victims. But then I remembered Tommy's tears, Mom's slap. "Too late," I said, voice cold. He pleaded. "Please retract it. For your mother's sake." Hypocrisy. I walked away, heart conflicted, but resolve intact. That night, back at the motel, the air conditioner rattling, I drafted the exposure. An anonymous post on the town's Facebook group, with screenshots of Mom's texts. My cursor hovered, moral grayness weighing heavy. Obsession whispered, do it. They betrayed you. But fear gripped. What consequences? Tommy stirred, mumbling in sleep, and doubt peaked. Was revenge worth orphaning him emotionally? I hit send anyway. The post went viral locally, comments exploding, shock, judgment, pity. By morning the town buzzed. I drove by the house, parked across the street under a canopy of oaks, leaves swirling in the wind. Dad's car was gone, Mom's curtains drawn. Suspense peaked as I imagined the fallout. Arguments, divorce perhaps. The twist came via a frantic call from Aunt Clara. Sarah, get to the hospital. Your father. He had a heart attack. My world tilted. Rushing there, tires screeching on wet pavement, rain blurring the windshield. Panic overrode everything. In the sterile hallway, beeps and murmurs echoing. Mom sat crumpled, eyes red. It's your fault, she whispered as I approached. But her voice held no rage, only despair. Dad survived, barely. In his room, tubes snaking from his arms, the antiseptic scent overwhelming. He looked frail. Sarah, he croaked. I sat, emotions crashing. Guilt, resentment, heartbreak. Why the affair, Mom? I asked softly, turning to her. She broke then, sobbing. To escape. But I ended it months ago. Revelation, her mistake was over. Her loyalty to Dad unwavering despite his flaws. And the debts. Partly from helping me. Extra loans for Tommy's daycare, my medical bills after birth. Hidden sacrifices. The truth unraveled me. Their help wasn't grudging. It was silent suffering. Dad's outburst. A breaking point from stress I'd ignored. My revenge, born of perceived betrayal, had been the real treachery. Obsession turned to horror. As Dad squeezed my hand weakly, whispering, forgive me. Poetic justice twisted. I'd won nothing but regret. We reconciled slowly, the family scarred but mending. I moved back, helping with bills, exposing my own flaws. Revenge's pursuit had nearly destroyed us, but in its wake, unexpected grace emerged. Forgiveness, layered and hard-won.